Hi everyone, it's Adila and Ben. Thanks for joining us today and thank you so much for your support so far.
Today, we'll discuss a few things that potential postgraduate students might want to sit and think about before they commit. So, you're thinking of doing a master's or PhD? Now what?
Before we start the episode, please make sure you've liked, followed, and subscribed to our podcast so you don't miss a single episode. You can find us on Instagram at So You Think You Can PhD, and we are also on Twitter and on YouTube as of last week.
So, please rate and review the podcast on any of those or any major podcasting platform. We can be found on most of them. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the show as well as any suggestions for future episodes.
Yeah, show us some love, guys. Let us know what you think so far and what you want to hear more of. Alright, let's get into episode 8. So, there are students out there thinking of doing a postgrad. There are a couple of things that you should probably think about before starting your postgrad and committing. And I guess, Ben, you and I, we've kind of had to cross this bridge before we started our PhDs as well. So, it'll be important to go back to these questions for us and kind of cement like where we are now, and this is why we kind of started. So let's get to it. First stop point. What is the main reason or the motive that you want to do a master's or a PhD or any other sort of postgrad?
Yeah, there's going to be a solid motivator here. I think that for myself, it was an end goal career, but like as now I'm 3 years into it, I think that it opens up a lot more career opportunities. So your goal can change, but I think going into it, you definitely have to have that aspiration for the end of it or what you want to get out of it, because I think that the way you carry out your PhD or your master's degree for that matter can influence how you come out and how well prepared you are for certain career paths.
Well said. I think it's a life rule as well. When you get into something or you decide to do something, you've got to think about the reasons why you're doing it, because it's very challenging. It's definitely not easy. So it's not just something you go into just for the fun of it.
Definitely.
I think the reason I started similar to you as well, I think because of two reasons. And one of the reasons being, as you mentioned, a career end goal as well. I was talking to a lot of people and a lot of them really said as well, you don't really regret having a master's or PhD. It kind of adds some sort of benefit to your life in the long run, even if you can't see it now. And the other reason I decided to start one is because I couldn't do anything else at the time.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a way of seeing it as like a paid job for the next few years at least. And then hopefully, like you said, more opportunities open up.
Definitely. It opens up as well the opportunity for skill development and meeting people. So don't even think of it as like just building towards a career. It's developing who you are.
It's the little things you learn along the way. And we'll actually touch on that in the second half of the episode where we discuss some of these translatable skills that you pick up going into a postgrad degree. Coming out of a postgrad, should I say. So that was the first point. What is the reason or the main motive behind starting a postgrad?
Yeah.
The next sort of thing to think about as well, Ben, when you start, there are many different options now in terms of flexibility because many people have families, many people also have to work, and perhaps not everyone will get a scholarship. So you have to think about whether you want to study full-time or part-time.
Definitely. That's a big, it's definitely a more personal decision. I think that for us, when we were looking to move from honours into a PhD, we were, I guess, more focused or perhaps pushed towards a full-time because of the scholarship opportunities. There are far more scholarships available doing a full-time PhD compared to part-time, whereas in part-time, I guess if you're working a job or if you come back from industry and you've been encouraged to do a PhD by your boss or supervisor, whoever you're working for, a company, whatever, then part-time may be the avenue for you and it might be financially the right choice for you.
Yeah. Did you ever consider doing part-time maybe at all?
I did before, but when I saw the scholarships or lack thereof, No, it was full time. I mean, I didn't want to try work.
Yeah, I think also we're quite lucky. We're coming out of university. We're younger. We're uncommitted. We're not like we don't have mortgages yet and things like that. So we can afford to focus a lot of our time on a full-time study load. Whereas
Yeah.
perhaps people who have bills to pay and stuff, they might have to continue working and then doing a part-time study load. So really, the only other thing with the full-time part-time thing is the length
Yeah.
of your study, right?
Yeah, it depends. Like full time, you obviously get it done much quicker. 3 to 4 years is generally the expected. I've heard part time.
For a PhD,
Yeah,
maybe different. I think 2 years for a master's.
generally 2 years for a master's. Yeah,
And then if you go part time, do you know?
I've heard 7, 8. I've even heard as long as 10, though that's not in Australia.
That's scary. That actually scares me.
Yeah, I mean
Like,
that's
I don't want to be
a
doing
long
this for
time.
10 years, please. My motto coming in was like, get in, get what you need to do done, and get out. And hopefully a door opens at the end stage and
Definitely.
it's not so bad.
Actually, I got given a piece of advice by, well, not necessarily advice, by an associate professor at Curtin once told me there was no such thing as a part-time PhD. And I guess his reason behind that was you may come in for 2.5, 3 days a week, but realistically, you're going to have issues, you're going to have problems, you're going to have optimization or record keeping or something to do, and it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to contain that to 2 to 3 days. It's going to splash out onto
Yeah.
other days in your free time.
That's true. So depending on other things you've got going on, you're going to end up doing work, have a family, etc., and do your part-time, quote unquote, PhD on top of all that. But that would probably be a lot of hours of work.
Yeah.
Like, it definitely won't be part-time hours.
No. But the plus side is you may finish it quicker than 8 years.
I don't know if that's a plus side. I mean, thinking about doing it full-time as 4 years, that's already a little bit daunting as well.
Oh, yeah.
3 to 4 years.
It's-
I think it sounds like a long time. While you're doing it, you're always wishing for more time, but then, yeah, you don't realize.
Yeah, that's it. I guess the other side of that is moving on to another point is how you choose the project. Because like we've discussed, you're going to be with that project for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, you want to start off having a passion for the project, don't you? Because
Yeah.
you're doing this project for 4 years. If you're not liking what you're doing, I mean, I feel like that would make a big impact, surely.
Yeah, I mean it's.
Or is it like your job? You don't need to necessarily have passion for your job. You go in and then you get out and your passion is behind the scenes. What do you think?
That's a really tough question. I think that you got to have at least a bit of passion for it. I think that passion has to really be there because whether or not you're going to be there for 9 to 5 at least every day, and if it's not your passion that's going to carry you through those hours, what is it going to be? It's going to be just either your supervisor pushing you along, or the stress, or some other unhealthy mental factors, which at the end of the day is not good for you.
Good for you, and not in the long run as well.
No.
You might be able to do it in the short term, but after 4 years, you're like, I really don't care about this project. Or,
No, that's
I mean,
it.
I'm the kind of person that I strongly believe whatever I do, I have to have passion, I have to have interest, or else what's the point of me doing it, right?
Yeah. I think it's quite tricky as well to gauge how interested you are in a project, because you might have that, I don't know, baby eyes at the beginning. You see a project and you're just like, wow, that sounds amazing. I'm going to do this. I'm going to cure cancer. And then when you get into it, you're just like, well, this is nothing like I imagined. And then I don't know how your interest may suffer as a result.
So you're saying like you start off really passionate, but you could slowly lose interest?
Yeah.
Okay, that's possible. I mean, personally speaking, in your project, how was it when you first started and how is it now?
I'm almost as passionate as I was at the start. I think I've lost a little bit, but not a lot. I think that, I guess this is the point I was pushing towards, was that take your time when you get your project. Like, I think I took about 5 to 6 months with my project before I officially enrolled into the university and officially accepted it. During that time, I guess you have opportunity to sit with your project and just mull it over, go through everything. You can search and just...
Which part of your project won you over? Was there a specific part that was like, yeah, this is what I want to do? for
Yeah,
the next
definitely.
few years? Yeah.
It was the animal stuff crossed with like MRI and PET imaging because it was just, well, for me, animals was just exciting and something that was a must-have on your resume. And the MRI and PET was just something that I'd not heard of in like an Australian university in terms of what was on offer. I mean, maybe I didn't look as much, but in terms of the projects that I'd come across, that was definitely a novel aspect.
Yeah, right. How did I find my project? I think I finished honours and I decided to take a gap year. And I kind of wasn't really looking for a project. I was really lost in this. I was doing some teaching at Curtin, but apart from that, I wasn't really thinking too much about like a PhD. Until one day, my honours supervisor, Nat, she sent me an email and she was basically telling me about Girish, the cardiologist that she's been talking about collaborating with. They have a project in mind, and she thought that it might be something I would be interested in. Would I want to have a meeting? Like, it's not something I have to commit to right away. Just meet him, have a look around, and have like the initial sort of meeting and discuss essentially. And then at that stage, I was like, yeah, I can't just be teaching casual hours for the rest of my life. I need to commit and do something. And this seems like a. Do you know when like something feels like it kind of just fell into your lap at the right time in the right place? That's kind of a little bit what it felt like.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it was meant to be, like your old supervisor coming back, this new project, this new supervisor as well.
And I think it helped a lot that I had already done like honours and a project with Nat, and I knew how helpful she was and how much she would be happy to guide and support, and she wouldn't like lie to me. I think so. When we discussed everything initially, I was like, yeah, okay, I could see myself here. I could see myself doing this for the next few years.
That's good.
But the project definitely was important. So what actually first drew me to this project was that it was a mixture of people work, like you're still talking to patients, you're still collaborating with people, but at the same time there's also an opportunity and a balance to do lab work, to do desk work, to do statistics, to write and all that other stuff as well. So it seemed like a good project that was quite new and novel in the gut microbiome area.
Ew, statistics. But yeah, definitely, I can hear what you're saying.
And now that I've said that, I'm like, why did I think doing a human study would be a great idea? Because all you hear me complaining about is the recruiting. So that's been a challenge. But yeah, so definitely choose the right project and don't be scared to shop around for a project. Talk to people. Talk about any projects they might potentially have on offer. Don't limit yourself to things that are kind of already been advertised. There's always other things. And I know our supervisor, Girish, he doesn't actively seek out students. He kind of goes through word of mouth. So he's quite exclusive that way. And he goes by recommendations from students he already knows in terms of people that he wants to work with, which I think is different, which I think is, like he says people lie on their resumes. Yeah. Were you there when he was telling that story?
Yeah, I was there.
And he was basically saying, like, the way that you write your resume, what was the example? Like, it's like you worked at Macca's or something, but the way you described it was so elaborate.
Yeah, it was just like you handle transactions.
Handled cash transactions for a large company, and you also did this and contributed to this and that, and it was like he worked at a cashier at McDonald's. So I think he was saying people basically lie or stretch. Okay, maybe lie is not the best word. Maybe stretch the truth
to its limits.
Better word. On resume, so that's why he's quite exclusive and prefers like word of mouth.
In fact, I got given a similar piece of advice at the end of my undergrad degree before I was going into my honours. So going into honours, we were all given, I guess, a list of maybe 40 projects, and we could look through the projects, read the abstract, see what interested us, and then next to each project there was a potential supervisor whose expertise was, of course, relevant to the project. But it was also told to us that not everyone had submitted a project. Not all the labs had. So if you have a particular interest, you can pretty much Google, just look up on your university's webpage, look who's working in that field and approach them and just express an interest. They might see, they might share this interest with you, that you might this idea that you have, it might become a project, or they might have a project they're perhaps hesitant to submit, and
Yeah,
you might be that
definitely.
student.
I actually have a friend recently. She has had recently applied to do a PhD for next year, and she actually did what you pretty much said. So she went out there and Googled this particular area of interest of research that she was into. I think it was sepsis. And she met with a couple of people involved and a couple of supervisors, and they were quite encouraging. They were like, put in that application, you can come up with a project. So she actually spent some time thinking and plotting what her research might be on. And I always admire that in students, the fact that they get a say or help to build this particular project of theirs. So yeah, and another friend that I know, she actually wants to move interstate. She wants to move to a university in Melbourne. So she reached out to a couple of supervisors there, and that kind of happened that way. And now she's going to apply to move there and things like that. So really, just shop around.
Yeah, definitely. That's exciting, going interstate for a project.
Yeah. Definitely. So Ben, leading on to choosing the right project for you, which is sometimes difficult. And I don't know if our listeners remember from episode 7, 2 episodes ago. No, that was, oh my God. I can't even remember. It's all a blur. But when we had those voice messages from other students, I remember distinctly Jordan mentioned that he actually had switched projects as well and supervisors and stuff like that. So
Yes.
if it doesn't feel right and in your gut it's not right, don't be afraid to move.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Don't feel like you're stuck.
He has quite an interesting story. I think might have to drag him on for an episode and an interview and get all the goss.
Yeah, I like that. I love a bit of goss. So the next part, Ben, is we've talked about how important the project is, but I think another thing that's probably more important than the project itself is choosing the right supervisor.
Yes. Yes.
And we'll talk a little bit about that after a short interlude. All right, Ben. So how important is it to have a supervisor that you get along with?
It's very important. I found that having a good supervisor is just a great influence on how your project progresses, but also a lot of your personal life, like not only your personal life, but your mental health, your work-life balance, and not to mention helping you avoid burnout. Because I feel like if a supervisor puts too much pressure on you, then, well, you're right. There's really only two options. You get to work, you do it, you do long hours, you get these results, and after some time you'll get the burnout, or
have a mental breakdown.
Yeah, exactly. Or you just, I don't know, I guess you snap earlier without doing the work, which is not great either. So having a good supervisor who understands the work, who understands that you're doing your best, you're still learning, especially if you come from a different background, then I think that is very, very important, perhaps even more so than choosing the right project.
I'm taken back to episode 6 where we had Jordan as a guest, and he basically mentioned that picking the right supervisor is like a happy marriage.
Yes.
And I think that's actually a good point in a way, because I'm the kind of person that needs to get along with someone, or else, I mean, if you're butting heads, you can imagine that, your project will suffer, you're going to suffer. And at the end of the day, it's your project, it's your PhD or your master's. If you're not getting that support,
that's it. It's not going to be a cruisy ride either. It's going to start off okay, and you may think you'll be able to tolerate it for 3 or 4 years or 2 years if you're doing a master's, but it's going to get worse. And towards the end, you're going to need that support more than ever. So if you're having those doubts at the beginning, you should definitely address them.
Trust your gut again.
Yeah.
I think also just how students can be lots of different kinds of students from lots of different backgrounds. Supervisors are the same. They can be from all walks of life, have all different experiences. It's a matter of kind of finding one that fits you in a bit like a puzzle.
Definitely.
That complements you, that gives you enough support, but also lets you work independently, because I think there's nothing worse as well than micromanaging a student.
I think as well, because there's such a negative stigma around research. There's a lot of papers that outline the mental health issues that happen in students doing postgraduate studies, the lack of support, So you definitely want to go under someone's supervision who recognizes this and recognizes that your health is important and that having a good balance while putting in the right amount of effort and work to get results and get you out of your degree on time, that's all very important.
We're quite lucky, aren't we? Our supervisors are very supportive, and they've also mentioned a few times that they recognise the link between PhD students, other postgrad students, and issues like mental health and burnout. And they want to make sure that they're there for us and they support us, but at the same time, they put enough pressure on us to make sure that we are getting what we need done.
Yeah.
So, in terms of your supervisors, Ben, without sort of going into too many personal details, I guess. What kind of relationship do you have with them, and how sort of do they help you along?
So I previously had I would say a pretty bad supervisor-student relationship, I guess, or marriage, as we referred to earlier. I did experience burnout. I had very minimal days off, and I certainly felt it at the end of my honours year. I felt it for so long. In fact, going into my PhD, I still felt it. But it just goes to show, I think for me, I learned probably the hard way that choosing the right supervisor is very important. It's also it's kind of difficult sometimes to identify the good supervisor as well, because sometimes you got to look at yourself and what you need. You might be the sort of person that needs a hard supervisor to get you moving. You got to look at yourself and say, what kind of motivation do I need between choosing the right project, being passionate about it, but also having the right motivation to come in on Monday when you don't really want to. You want a 3-day weekend, you want a 4-day weekend. You got to come in and do some work. You got to know what you need, and I think that that's really important. And thankfully, I think that this time around, nailed it. I think that.
Yeah, right. So that was a different project, a different sort of part or time of your life, and then this is a different sort of experience now.
Yeah.
So it's good because you've had the bad, and now you can sort of see how it is when you have the good, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about your mental state when you started this PhD with this new project, this new supervisors. You're not feeling that burnout, are you?
No, definitely not. In fact, I felt kind of weird. It wasn't what I was used to. I was feeling unsure of how much I should be working, I guess, or no. I don't know how many hours, or just I felt so unsure of so many things, but at the same time, I was just like, trust, I guess. You have to trust the process. Trust that you're doing the right amount at the right time. And that, I guess as well, you have, at that point when you start, you have to have enough trust in your supervisor that they know that you're doing enough at that point. So when you come in, you're green-eared, you know what's going to go, what's going on, what you need to do. I mean, you may know you need to do ethics, but you don't know if you need to be optimizing or doing something in the lab, if there's something you could already be doing. And if you don't do it early enough, then it's going to push that part of your project. There's that trust that you have to have straight away. And I think that during that first part, it is really important to develop that. Otherwise, it kind of tarnishes and ruins the rest of it. And, well, it can lead to negative mental health issues down the track.
For sure. And I think as well, because personally, I have such a good relationship, I feel, with my supervisors that sometimes I have to even tell myself to remember that there is still a line and that they are still your supervisor, and that there still needs to be that level of student supervisor sort of relationship as well. And don't get too carried away. But I think also I'm the kind of person that needs support with my project itself, because like you said, when you first start, you're not sure what you're doing. You need a bit of hand holding.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot like that for me at first. But I think I'm the kind of person that doesn't just need help for my project, which is quite, down to business. I also need emotional support. I'm quite a very emotional person, as I'm sure you've noticed. But it's the words of affirmation as well for me. It's like, you're on the right track. You've done this well. Now you need to do the next thing. Just that emotional kind of support, which I've spoken to a few other students, and some of their supervisors aren't like that. And I know it's kind of down to the person that you are, but some people are just not
in touch with their emotions and what they need.
Yeah, and they find it very hard to show their emotions, I guess, or show their emotional support. So I feel that I'm very lucky that I've got a supervisor that I can go into, for example, Nat's office, and I can be like, this is the problem that I'm having this week. I'm not feeling that good, or this has happened and I'm not motivated to recruit. And she'll be like, what's going on? Talk to me. Also, that's okay. You're doing well, and etc. etc. But at the same time, I also want to make sure that I don't let them down in a way.
Yeah.
Like, because I want the project to be a success, not just for me. I also want to do well for them, and I don't want them to like think I'm dumb. Like, not think I'm dumb, but like I just don't want to let them down as well at the same time, if that makes sense.
No, it does. You like enter the project with this sense of responsibility, even though you like not entirely sure of what you kind of have an idea, but you don't want to disappoint them because you want to make them proud.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's on you if you mess it up, but it's also on you if you do it well. Like we all work together, so you shouldn't really be messing anything up. But
no,
I think there's always that doubt in the back of your mind.
Definitely. You need that balance between that, knowing that you've got this, being responsible, but also keep in mind that you haven't done this before, so it's expected that you need a bit of guidance, a bit of reassurance from time to time.
Yeah. And Nat knows this, but I can't make a decision to save my life. Like, I'm so indecisive. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know when to do it, but like, I know what I have to do as well. It's just a matter of always second guessing myself and having those doubts. But I think that's something that I need to work on throughout my PhD. Like, I just need to be more of a
decision maker,
assertive person, which I'm not. Like, I'm so chill. Yeah. Like, I literally, like, I don't care about it. Well, it's not that I don't care. I'm just so like, yeah, whatever. Like, she'll be right. But yeah, I need to be more assertive. And I think you also need to be more decisive, because lately you have been not that much better than me, right?
No. I struggle with a lot of decisions. I think I've gotten better at decisions in work, but I think I've gotten proportionally worse at making decisions outside of work.
Should I get a Mac Mini and a new MacBook Pro, or should I just get one, or should I get none? I think that's the latest dilemma.
Yeah, that's been going on for too long.
Yeah. So what have you decided? Are you going to get the new M1 chip MacBook Pro or the Mac Mini?
I'm not sure.
Watch this space, guys. So definitely the supervisor. Would you say, Ben, also that the supervisor is more important than the project? Okay, hear me out. If you've got a project that maybe you're not so passionate about, or that it's really hard, but you've got a good supervisor, that's always going to be a motivating factor for you to do well. Whereas if you've got a really, really, really good project, but the worst supervisor ever, then it doesn't matter how good the project is.
Yeah. When you first mentioned that, the first question that came to my mind was, why are you doing it? Like, seriously, that's the first question that comes to mind with either scenario. And you got to sit down and have a good hard look at yourself. And
taking it back to point one. I like that.
Yeah. But you know what? I actually knew someone. I met them at Curtin, and they did their master's in research over in Sydney, I think. But I think they saw their supervisor 3 times. And I don't think they even had a postgrad, postdoc in their lab. They self-taught themselves everything.
Yeah, no, I'm not about that.
No, that's some serious character building stuff. But I have to tell you, he had so much...
Are they okay?
Yeah, no, like, he's probably one of the best researchers I've met.
Okay, that's cool.
A lot of the people at Curtin thought that he had his PhD, but he doesn't.
Damn.
So I think that goes to show as well. Like,
fake it till you make it.
He's really knowledgeable, and I have so much respect for him. And I think a lot of the postdoc researchers there too will share that perspective.
That's crazy.
But it's
good on him.
Yeah, 100%. But at the same time,
But at the same time, he shouldn't have had to go through that.
Definitely. He shouldn't have had to. I guess it goes back to that scenario. Like, I guess he was okay with having a really, really good project.
Yeah, I guess it's the kind of person you are as well. And he sounds like quite a proactive, motivated person.
Oh, wow.
So there's 2 types of people, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. The next question, I guess, for people to think about, and this probably would depend a lot on the supervisor and the project as well, but what university or institute to do your project through? And does that depend on whether you're applying for scholarships, and it will just be through whatever institution you scholarship applying for and what you eventually may get? Yeah. So there's a lot of things connected with what university you're affiliated with for the duration of your postgrad.
Definitely. There's also you might find that some universities are probably maybe more specialized in some research areas, which may sort of make that field a bit more uneven.
True. And I think for me personally, when I finally accepted the fact that, yeah, I'm going to have to apply for a PhD, which in the back of my mind, as I was even applying, I was like, I'm not going to get this scholarship. I'm not going to do this PhD. And then I'm like, wait, if I do get it, it'll be a sign from the universe that I should do this for the next 4 years. So even as I was applying, I was like, what am I doing? Am I going to get this? Am I not? And then, I still even couldn't make up my mind. But for me personally, I had done my undergrad at Curtin, and I think for me, I wanted to change that up. I wanted to try something new. So I went and applied through UWA, but also I applied through UWA because I had missed the Curtin deadline, so I couldn't apply for both anyway, because I know sometimes you can apply through multiple channels.
Yeah.
And kind of hope for the best. I was lucky actually to get a scholarship and to be able to get it at UWA. I think for me that's it's nice to have the two unis kind of behind you in a way.
Yeah, it's good to have that change. But that definitely sounds like a sign from the universe that you should do a PhD. And it should be at UWA, not at Curtin, because of the deadline thing. But definitely, I mean, there's some...
Yeah, you gotta listen out for the little signs out there, you know. These things happen for a reason.
Exactly. If you find a supervisor, a perfect project, a different university online, it's your number one hit in Google, then I think that's a sign.
And then you get in, done.
Yeah, signed. Off you go.
And then as you do the project, if things go wrong and you get a sign saying back out, don't do this anymore, quit, then that's okay if you leave.
And don't come back to us.
We didn't give you this advice. How about you, Ben? So you mentioned that you were previously at Curtin as well. How did you come to where you are now? Was there a particular reason, I guess?
No, there wasn't really a particular reason. It was kind of just the stars aligned. I wasn't thinking about...
Hey, this is a science podcast.
All science jokes are welcomed here. No, it was kind of by word of mouth. I got introduced to my current supervisor, Girish. And
oh, really?
Yeah.
Who's word of mouth?
There was an associate professor at Curtin who mentioned my name, and I ended up meeting Girish maybe a week later. And
see, there's that exclusivity. There's that word of mouth again.
Yep.
Ooh, do you feel special that Girish wanted to work with you?
A little bit. I felt terrified when I first went to meet him. I was like, I don't know if I'm good enough to do this.
Yeah, he's a bit scary, isn't he, when you first meet him?
I know. And they sit down, they ask you these questions, and I've got their arms crossed, their legs folded. It's just
look right into your soul. Are you going to be that student that messes up, or are you going to do well for me?
And meanwhile, you're trembling in the other seat, just shrinking. And
yep.
But yeah,
trying to feel like not a fraud as you sit there in front of them. Like, I don't know any of these things.
Yeah, exactly. It's quite interesting because at the same time when I went for the interview with Girish, I was offered a job interview.
Oh, really?
So I could have been a respiratory sleep technician, which would have been okay, I guess.
Yeah, but I guess the stars didn't align for that particular job, did it then?
Well, it did take place at night. I know the stars are there all the time, but still... I thought that joke was pretty valid.
Jupiter might have been in retrograde or something. So we've talked a bit about the project, the supervisor, the university. We've kind of touched on the scholarships, but the next sort of important point to think about is your financials. If you get a scholarship, that sort of takes the pressure off having to work to support yourself to do your PhD or your master's. But at the same time, if you don't get a scholarship, is that something that you want to invest your time in to do your research, but also having to do a job or something that will pay your bills and other things like that?
Yeah, I guess that might also influence if you enrolled part-time versus full-time, like if you were working as well.
Yeah, I remember when I was at Curtin, this would have been a few years ago now, 2017, when I was doing my honours year, I met another PhD student who was doing a study on air pollution, I think, in people's houses. She was much older, like she was maybe like early 50s, mid 50s. Wow. So she was telling me actually that she didn't get a PhD scholarship. And so she actually has to do her PhD full time on top of having a family and also a job that she has to work at to support herself and her family. And I'm like, come again? I don't know how you do that.
Goodness. I haven't even met this person. I feel that stress.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I really admired her for that. I'm like, you must be...
Superwoman.
Yeah, like real. But I think for me, like back to my story, when I was saying I was applying for these scholarships and I was taking it as a sign, like if I get a scholarship, I'll do this. But if I hadn't had gotten a scholarship, I would not be here.
No, you wouldn't. Yeah, that
No,
was fair enough.
no way.
That is the determining point for a lot of people. I think for me as well, it would have really made me think twice. I think at the end of the day, I was set on doing a PhD. I think it would have affected my decision in the way that I might have gone part time. I would have gone part time for maybe 6 months or a year and then retried for the scholarship. And then if I was successful, then
Mm.
switch. But then if I wasn't, then wow. I can't
That's
even
another
think.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like you said, though, you could always just get in, support yourself somehow for the first 6 months or a year, and then reapply for the next round of scholarships.
yeah.
It's possible. The other thing as well is my friend that I was talking about recently, who was designing her own project and things like that on sepsis. I think she mentioned that her supervisors were saying that even if she didn't get the PhD scholarship that she was applying for, they actually have some money aside for a PhD student,
Yeah.
and it would be a case of starting off using their money, and then once the scholarships reopen again in her first year, she can reapply and hopefully get a scholarship that round.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the scholarship applications was like? What kind of stuff did they want to know? I remember they asked for our academic transcript, so our
Yeah.
grades, what units we did.
CV.
Yeah, a CV. We had to write, I think, a cover letter or why we wanted to attend this particular university or why the scholarship would be important for us,
Hmm.
how we would use that money and contribute to science or something, to contribute to a project.
Yeah, I remember something to that effect.
I think the main thing was, oh, sorry, it was on the tip of my tongue. Scholarship. Oh, they asked you about your publications. Had
Mm.
you published any not conference papers, journal articles or papers before? Have you presented at any conferences? Because I think you get points, or it looks better on the application if you've got those things. I think also if you've done honors. I think if you've done honors, you get an extra couple of points.
Hmm.
Things like that really
They really boost your
boost
application
your
and make
application.
it
That's
more
right.
competitive. I think as well, if you've been a previous scholarship holder, I think they try and gauge who you are as a student, and how you conduct yourself.
Yeah, they do ask that as well because you can apply for multiple scholarships. So I think they were wanting to know, have you applied for other scholarships? Because then maybe they try and distribute it against other students as well to make sure as many people get one as possible.
Yeah, I think as well which universities you submit it to can also affect the screening process. So I know that I think Notre Dame here, it's the only private university in WA. They have a one-on-one interview with you, and you're required to bring a portfolio.
Yeah, they're really into not just smarts, but they want to know that you've done other things outside of the classroom
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
Yeah, that's really good as well, especially in this day and age where we want people to be quite well-rounded, don't we?
yeah.
Yeah, like you said, though, it would depend on the university or the institution you're applying for. Make sure you check all the details out, which was probably listed on their website,
Yep.
as well as on the scholarship forms. Talk to other students, talk to your supervisors, because whatever they're affiliated with is probably where you will be going, right?
Yeah, yep.
So, for example, our supervisor works at UWA, so we are UWA students. That works out. If it's the other way around, it would be a little bit trickier.
Yeah, you got to find a supervisor who is employed at that university or wherever your scholarship is coming from, and
Yeah.
that can sometimes complicate your project or add another layer to it.
Definitely. The last dot point that I have is accommodation slash commute. Commute. I said that right. What did I say? Commute. What is that? Commute?
Commute?
Commute. Your travel time. Will you need to move for study?
Yeah, that's another big decision. I think that might depend on who you are as a person, as well as maybe where you are in your project.
Yeah, so I mean, as well, if you're like in regional and you have to come onto campus, for example, for the project, then you can't be traveling 3-4 hours back and forth every day. Like you probably have to move.
Yeah.
But the good thing is there are lots of accommodation options, Airbnbs, even on-campus housing, and lots of scholarships as well for accommodation and travel. So definitely look those up as well if you're in a position where you're thinking of doing one, but one of the things stopping you is accommodation and commute. So
Definitely, and
yeah, we're quite lucky, right? We don't.
yeah.
Well, I mean, you commute,
I
but
commute.
Yeah.
We both commute. What do you mean?
The
You
more
don't live here. Do you?
You've got a toothbrush in my drawer. Yeah, I guess we do, but we're lucky. Like, I'm 20-minute drive away, so it's not a big deal. Whereas some people have had to move from and had to leave their families and stuff behind,
Yeah.
move to states or countries, and that adds a extra layer of complexity.
I think it does vary on your situation. I mean, you might find, I don't know if there's such a project exists, you might end up having to only go into uni maybe once a week, twice a week, and you live, I don't know, a few hours away. Then that gets even more complicated, but it may be justifiable for you to stay there at home. And you might find you may be able to do a lot of your work remotely.
Yeah, it just really depends, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think as well with COVID just happening, we've probably adapted to that office away from work environment.
Yeah, it's good to have that flexibility. And I think more workplaces and bosses need to recognize that, because there are some people that we were talking to, I think someone on our building, they're still being quite rigid. Like, just let them work one day a week from home. If they can do that, then why are you stopping them?
Exactly.
So there are a couple of things, but there has definitely been a shift in workplace culture and mentality in terms of flexibility and workplace arrangements, which is great.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's good. We're here for it. So I think, Ben, unless there's anything else you'd like to add about things that you should think about before you start, so far we've covered 7 different points: the reason behind it, will you study full-time or part-time, choosing the right project, the importance of the supervisor, which university, will you apply for scholarships? What are your financials like? And the last point that we've just talked about is having to move for study and also travel time.
I actually have one more comment. Maybe in referring to choosing the right supervisor, if you're having a hard time gauging them, especially because you've just got a piece of paper with a project on it, you've found this person, you're not sure what they are. I mean, sure, they're pleasant. First impressions are great. A good idea is track down an old student or ask the current employees. That's always a good way to see how they really are, because especially they won't lie to you. There's no reason for them to lie to you.
Yeah, I think when I started, I might have had a quick chat with you or something about what your experiences were like, and having come in working with Girish and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's actually really good advice, Ben. Kind of stalkerish though. Imagine looking someone up on Facebook or LinkedIn and be like, "Hey, what's the goss on Supervisor X?"
Yeah. Well, you might not. Maybe. You can,
not like that.
Yeah. If you're meeting them, your supervisor, maybe ask for a tour, and then you can I don't know, if you see some people
prepare 20 questions beforehand. Just hit them with it. No.
Or just try and note down, I don't know, name of an employee or something, and then
yeah,
maybe just contact them via work email.
Yeah.
I emphasize work email because trying to avoid the stalker, but
trying to avoid being creepy.
Yeah, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind either way.
Yeah, great advice. All right. After this, we will talk about some of those translatable skills that you may be surprised that you're picking up during your postgrad, and how that will be beneficial to you when you're done.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben, so sometimes people are wondering, what sort of things do you gain from doing a postgrad except finishing off with your master's and finishing off with your PhD? But I'm only just starting to realize as a student 2 years into my PhD that there are so many little things that you pick up, that you learn, that you don't even realize sometimes. But these are all translational skills and skills that you can take with you now and use, and definitely will be of benefit to you in the future. You've got some good dot points there. Would you like to share some of these skills?
Yeah, so on top of all the expected or obvious lab skills you develop, or clinical skills and writing in a specific academic or scientific style, you have the translational skills, which I think could be recognized coming out of a sciencey environment, even going to industry or changing career altogether, leaving science.
That's what we mean by translatable, by the way, just so everyone knows.
you definitely develop a lot of skills in organization. So keeping yourself organized and in time with everyone around you, especially if you're working on a project with other people. That comes down to as well, like keeping your time very managed and in line with your project goals. Also, how you conduct yourself in emails and professional interactions, basically, because you're not going to be working by yourself. You'll be interacting with other people and more than likely having to coordinate with them and juggle
Oh
a
my
few things
God.
at the same time.
The amount of times that I've pressed reply all when I'm supposed to just reply to one person, or press reply to one person and I've got reply all. Like, it's actually just
Yeah,
something that you need to be kind of constantly aware of. And these are the kind of little soft skills that you build.
definitely.
Making sure you email the right people.
Oh, and I don't know about you, but I know with me, if I'm just sending an email, it takes, I don't know how long for me to
Oh
write
my
an
God. You
email.
sit there and you're like planning out this whole novella, and then they literally reply with, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Like, we overthink everything.
We had a associate professor at Curtin. We had this theory that he wanted to keep all his replies shorter than his title. No matter how long of an email we sent him, his replies were always yes, no, maybe. Just short replies. And it was,
I love that. So yeah, these don't seem like things that you need to think about, but you get good at them eventually.
yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, I'm hoping. I
Yeah.
still sent someone the wrong email the other day, so
uh, that's okay. Like how you recover from that, I think, is also a skill because we're human.
I
We're going to
don't.
make
I'm just never
errors.
gonna show my face.
Oh dear.
Uh,
But carrying on from like interacting with people and being responsible for handling your tasks within your job. I mean, this will probably vary a bit for everyone in their lab or their project. I mean, you might not have a postdoc or senior person working in your lab. It might be down to you, and you may have to be responsible for something like just even ordering your own reagents or trying to find a, I don't know, strain of bacteria or something. You may have to email a professor from a different university, and you'll be nervous and you'll be spell checking, grammar checking it so many times just to get it right. But this is the sort of thing where you're sort of building on that skill, interacting with people, and you're having to make sure that what you're asking for is appropriate and it's going to suit what you're doing. You're going to get the best results from what you're doing. So it kind of pulls in your research skills as well. Like research is not just relevant in developing new ideas and addressing hypotheses and aims. It's about solving a question that you don't know the answer to.
mm. It's a lot of like you said, time management that kind of all works towards that as well. And I think for me personally, being able to manage my time between recruiting, processing the samples, putting all their data onto statistics onto Excel and SPSS, and then writing in or using a spreadsheet to note when I'm going to call them back for follow up, when I'm going to check in on them, when I'm going to post their follow up packs, when I'm going to book them into the clinic, and then working around that follow ups in the clinic with recruiting and all that stuff. So it's all really, really critical. And it stresses me out every time, but I know if I try and stay on top of it, it's only going to help me in the long run. So you want to make sure that you're proactive and you're having the initiative and the motivation to stay on top of it, because your supervisors aren't going to be in charge of that. They're not going to be running around calling patients for you. It's like it's
No,
on you really
it's
to be organized
at the end of the day, it's your project.
as
You've got to
well.
take responsibility.
Yeah. And back to those lab skills and clinical skills, I know for me personally, from the first day that I started recruiting patients to maybe now, I know like there's definitely been a big difference to my approach. So like these skills, the more you do them, the more experience you get with them, the more patients you recruit and meet, the better you get at them.
Definitely.
And also pipetting, like I was doing pipetting, I was aliquoting some serum that I'll be using next week to have a look at inflammatory cells. So I'll be doing that with Sylvia next week. So all that pipetting, I found that I was getting a bit better, a bit faster at it. So what about you? What sort of lab skills and stuff that you've built throughout the last few years, Ben, personally?
Yeah, so coming into my PhD, I've developed skills related to histology. I'd never done any histology before coming into my PhD.
What is histology for people who may not know?
So it's
The study of?
staining really thin sections.
The study of Tissues.
The study of tissues, yes.
Histo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, go on.
No, it's
That's
okay.
my human biology teacher coming out.
Studying the sectioning of tissues and what staining can tell you about that particular piece of tissue, what has happened to that organ, looking into its past, and that's a skill that I'm still working on, and I can tell you I'm not that fond of it, but
Yeah, histo.
it's with some resistance, it's gotten better.
Yeah,
It's not-
you basically had to teach yourself that. Well, you had help, but it was
Yeah.
something that you picked up during your PhD, as you hadn't done that before, so that's exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a skill and a knowledge you've picked up on.
Yeah, it's another arrow in my quiver.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you're constantly learning and adding things to your skill set. Yeah, and I'm excited after all this recruitment is over to actually get into the lab and learn some new things as well.
Yeah.
So that would be exciting. I think that's. Did you want to add anything else to that, Ben?
Along all that, I think that two more things. Along all the process, you're learning how to solve problems or issues that may arise.
You're troubleshooting on the go.
You're troubleshooting on the go. Even though things may not be going, you're still troubleshooting, you're problem solving. But at the same time, you're having...
My motivation's going.
Yeah, that's it. As well as your stress.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we have learnt to manage and deal with better as time's gone on. Like, as you start, your stress is quite low, it increases with your workload and things going on. So I think
you might have to teach me this skill because I don't have it yet. You're teach me how to manage my stress, Ben.
It involves a lot of chocolate.
Oh, that doesn't sound healthy. No, those are definitely some good points. The more stressed you are, the better you get at
the better you get going.
I think we might wrap up this episode now. It's turned out to be a little bit longer than we'd like it to be. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and for your ongoing support. Ben, what are we going to be talking about next week?
So next week we have our first PhD student on the show, besides us, of course.
10 episodes in and we've got a PhD student. That's nice.
Yeah, this is quite exciting. We have Joanne coming on. She's a software engineer and she's going to take us through a project which is really, really cool. Involves a lot of programming and, well, I'm imagining all the sci-fi movies in the dark room with the green code running down the screen.
Yeah, I've seen the green codes on her desktop. I'm wondering what she gets up to every day. But yeah, stay tuned. But for now, thank you so much for spending your time with us, whether it be on the drive to and from work or whether you're just sitting at home with a nice cup of tea. We really appreciate your support and we hope to see you next week.
Bye.
If you'd like to get involved, drop us your questions and your queries. Let us know what you'd like to hear on the show. And you can find us on our Instagram at SoYouThinkYouCanPhD. And there's a link to our email there as well. Thank you so much. See you next week.